Clad only in a bikini, a woman runs into the jungle as she flees from a threat. An armed alien is chasing her, and when she trips to the ground, she cowers in fear. Suddenly, a mysterious man shoots the alien with a laser bow, saving the damsel in distress. Elsewhere, two nubile captives named Daria and Tisa are imprisoned in a spacecraft dungeon. As Daria tries to break the chains that bind her, Tisa gives discouraging comments, saying that it can't be done. However, Daria persists, and the rusty chains finally break apart. This delights Tisa, and Dara immediately helps free her. With the chains broken, they still need to get out of the cage. Daria realizes that they can short-circuit the lock on the cell using the chains. She instructs Tisa to give her a boost, and when the chain touches the lock, Daria gets electrocuted. On the bright side, the cage is now open, and she's not badly hurt. Not long after, the ladies escape from the cage and overpower the guards. After finding the keys to their cuffs, Daria and Tisa steal a starship. Daria is excited to fly a starship again, though Tisa complains about the ship's quality. Still, they have no other options. Daria struggles to open the escape hatch, noting that they need a special glove to access the computer. Tisa jokes about checking the glove compartment, but when Daria does, she actually finds the pilot's glove, allowing her to punch in the code to open the hatch. Finally, the women escape. As soon as they've taken off, Tisa realizes that they're cruising in the middle of nowhere, and Daria adds that the ship is not equipped for long travels. Suddenly, the scanner picks up a safe channel beacon from a small planetoid, so they decide to land there. Tisa notices that the beacon is also some off-beam landing coordinates. As they get closer to their destination, the ship's engine goes haywire, and the brakes stop functioning. With no choice, Daria says they need to jump out and hope that the atmosphere on the planetoid is breathable. The ship crashes into the water, and everything turns black. Later on, Daria reaches the beach, and she immediately collapses on the sand. On the cliff, an android observes her from afar, and when she sees it, she realizes that she's not alone. Daria gets up to explore, and she finds a large door in the middle of the jungle. Suddenly, the door opens itself, and she walks inside to see a room adorned with weapons and taxidermied wild animals. Soon, the android appears, and Daria explains that her ship crashed, and she's the sole survivor. When she gets no response, a dashing man suddenly enters the room. He introduces himself as Zed, claiming that he owns the castle. Daria retells her story, but Zed already knows because her friend arrived before her. Tisa appears behind Daria, wearing a lovely black dress. The two ladies are relieved and ecstatic to be reunited. Daria asks if she's mentioned the off-beam landing coordinates to Zed, but Tisa says she didn't get the chance. Zed interrupts their conversation, saying that the android, Vac, will show Daria to the guest room for a change of clothes. He also mentions that he has other guests who are also shipwreck survivors, and they'll be present at dinner. Daria finally gets to her room and realizes that there are bars on the windows. When she asks about it, Vac explains that the place was once a fortress built by space pirates. After Vac gives Daria's clothes, he later meets up with Zed and confirms that there are no other survivors on the beach. Not long after, Zed enters Daria's room and invites her to meet the guests. There, she gets acquainted with a woman named Shella and her brother, Rick, who have been there for 10 days. Shella explains that they've been waiting for Zed's ship to get repaired so they can leave, and Zed adds that they need to be patient for a little longer. On the other hand, Daria and Tisa aren't in a hurry to leave, as they're comfortable in the place. Rick mentions that the place is perfect for Zed's hunting, but Shella thinks it's contradictory that a man hunting for sport is called civilized. Zed points out a taxidermied beast, recounting how they both hunted each other. Tisa asks if it would be a sport if Zed were the prey and not the hunter. Zed claims he never has to decide on that since there are two kinds of people in the world, the hunter and the hunted. He elaborates that one should hunt the enemy first, then go for the women to bask in the glory of his hunt with. As he elaborates on the thrill that this sport gives him, Daria, Tisa, and Shella feel uneasy. To change the topic, Shella asks Zed to play his holographic instrument, and he is delighted to do so. However, Rick doesn't stay to witness his performance, and as he gets up, he asks Daria to accompany him. As soon as they separate from the group, Rick reveals his speculations about Zed. He says that Zed's spacecraft doesn't really need repairs. Rick adds that there were 4 of them a week ago, but their pilot and navigator went missing after Zed took them to the trophy room. When Rick asked where they were, Zed replied that they'd gone hunting. Hearing this, Daria becomes vigilant and asks how many androids are on the island. Rick says that there are 2, and they keep watch of everything. Vac is in charge of the castle while Krell patrols the beaches and the jungle. Soon, Zed finishes playing, so Daria and Rick join the others. Then, Zed recommends that they should go off to bed, and as usual, Vac guides them to their room like their children. That night, Daria wakes up to the sound of laser beams and a man's scream. She gets up and arms herself with a piece of ornament. When the door opens, she immediately attempts to swing at the intruder, but it turns out to be Rick. He reports that his sister is not in her room, and Zed must be planning something. Then, he tells Daria that he was only pretending to be high during dinner because if he stays sober, he might be Zed's next victim. He reckons that Shella is in the trophy room, so they both go downstairs to check it out. To their horror, the room is adorned with human heads and bones. It also has an altar in the middle and a majestic throne decorated with skulls. Suddenly, someone taps Rick's shoulder, and it turns out to be Tisa. She's snooping around after she took a duplicate key from Zed's room. Seeing the heads on the walls, the three conclude that they must escape, or they'll meet the same fate. Tisa says that there's an escape launch at the end of the corridor, and Rick adds that they can use that to leave, but they must first find Shella. Later on, they sense that Zed has returned from his hunt, so they immediately leave and hide in Shella's chambers. Not long after, he enters the trophy room, and the androids place a bloody sack on the altar. Zed's friendly demeanor disappears as he brings out a human head from the sack. Meanwhile, Daria realizes that there are no bars in Shella's room, so they must take the opportunity to escape before morning comes. The trio plots to set traps in the jungle, while Tisa stays behind to keep her eyes on Zed and find Shella. With this, Daria and Rick leave. Elsewhere, Shella wakes up to find that she's chained to the wall. Zed walks up to her and tears her undergarments. After this, he starts kissing Shella, but she protests, saying that Rick will kill him. When Zed remains unfazed, Shella bites his hand. This only excites him further. Back in the jungle, Daria and Rick have already begun placing traps. Suddenly, they hear something from afar, and they spot a mutant, which quickly runs off after something growls behind them. In the trophy room, Shella is placed on the altar with the android restraining her legs. Then, Zed approaches her and removes his shirt. Later, Tisa decides to peek into the trophy room, and she finds Shella on the altar, unconscious. Zed, who's standing over her, tells his androids to keep Shella chained to prevent her from alerting the others. By sunrise, Daria and Rick hurry back to the castle before Zed realizes they're gone. True enough, Zed sends Vac to check on the rooms, so to buy time, Tisa tries to seduce the android into coming with her to the beach. At first, Vac refuses, but he decides to go with her anyway. At the same time, Zed orders Krell to patrol the beaches, and if he finds anything unusual, it must be reported immediately. On the beach, Tisa tells Vac to stay near the rocks while she takes a dip. However, Krell sees him and says that he should be back at the castle. Because of this, Vac gets offended, and the two androids bicker. Unbeknownst to them, Rick and Daria hide on top of the rocks, struggling to get past the androids. Tisa spots her companions, so she distracts the android to let them escape. While Vac fetches a towel, Krell leaves and says he'll report him to Zed, and Vac gets annoyed by this. Soon, Rick and Daria climb up the castle vines to return to Shella's room. However, Zed is fast approaching, keeping them from returning to their rooms. Quickly, Daria tells Rick to remove his clothes, and they hop on the bed together. As Zed peeks through the door, he gets convinced by what he's witnessing, and walks away. However, Rick gets carried away with their little act, so Daria kicks him out of bed. He moans in agony, so Daria pulls him back, and they make love for real this time. After this, Daria thanks Rick for making her feel alive and reminding her of what she's fighting for. Rick says she doesn't have to thank him because it was his pleasure, and she made him the happiest man in the universe. Later on, Rick walks out of the room with a huge grin on his face. However, an android suddenly knocks him unconscious. When he wakes up, he finds himself held outside the castle at night, flanked by the androids. Zed appears and confesses that he's holding Shella as a prisoner. With this, he hands a laser gun to Rick and forces him to participate in a hunt. However, the gun won't activate for the first 10 minutes, so Zed will allow him that time to run ahead. If Rick manages to kill or elude Zed until dawn, he's free to leave along with Shella. The hunt begins, and Zed enters the jungle along with his two androids. 10 minutes pass and Rick can finally use his gun. Upon seeing his pursuers come close, Rick fires the gun, but Zed evades, leading an android to get shot instead. Rick runs in the dark but gets stuck in a huge web. Unfortunately, Zed spots him and shoots him with his laser bow, killing Rick instantly. After this, the androids mutilate his body. Later on, Daria, Tisa, and Shella wake up, chained to the wall. Zed walks up to them and gestures to Rick's severed head on the wall. Shella immediately looks away and cries about her loss. Daria berates him, saying that there was no need to show that to Shella. Zed explains that all of them have different needs, and to him, it's experiences that stimulate him. Zed believes that the best of life lies closer to death, but Daria disagrees, saying that one should do their best to survive. Because of this, Zed challenges the women to test out their opposing philosophies in a hunt. However, Shella says he can't possibly hunt women, but Zed likes the challenge because women are more crafty and cunning than men. Zed explains that he'll release the three of them simultaneously, and give them hunting knives and an hour's head start. He inserts a map in Darla's bikini, telling them to head to a temple on the far side of the island where they can use high-powered laser weapons. After this, Zed meets them outside the castle and hands out a few knives. As one of the androids frees the women, Zed explains that he'll use his favorite pistol crossbow to hunt them down. With this, Tisa sarcastically wonders why he'd handicap himself to that point, and Zed explains he wants to give them every opportunity to beat him because it motivates his competitive instincts. Before they leave, Zed advises them not to get lost in the Phantom Zone. As the three women venture into the jungle, Shella stops and plots to ambush Zed. However, Daria and Tisa argue that they should stick together to outnumber the enemy. Shella agrees and sticks with the group instead. After this, Daria leads the group to where the traps are, but as they arrive, they discover that someone was already caught in them. As the corpse lies upside down, the three decide to go to the temple instead. Before they leave, Daria inserts the map in Tisa's bikini for safekeeping. On their way to the temple, Daria proudly introduces the trip vine that she made with Rick before. An hour has passed, and they still haven't reached the temple. Because of this, Daria reckons that Zed has already started, so they need to hurry. Unfortunately, Tisa lost the map. With this, Shella volunteers to help Tisa find the map, but Tisa refuses and goes off by herself. Elsewhere, Zed has already entered the jungle with the androids. At the same time, Daria and Shella take a break, and Shella expresses that she's tired of everything. However, Daria says they can't end up like the heads in the trophy room. Daria expresses her condolences regarding Rick, and Shella thanks her and says she never thought she needed friends until now. Meanwhile, Tisa almost runs into Zed, but she manages to hide in the bushes. Zed nearly steps on the trip vine, but he spots it and saves himself. Elsewhere, Daria and Shella decide to go back for Tisa, but as they approach her, Zed senses them. Because of this, Tisa signals the others to stay back because Zed is ready to ambush. Daria and Shella worry that Tisa might get caught, so Shella lures Zed out of hiding. However, she gets shot in the back and dies. With this, Daria and Tisa take the opportunity to run for their lives. As Zed and the androids run after them, Daria places a spike in the middle of the path, and consequently, Zed walks through it and injures himself. Once they're far away from Zed, Tisa mourns Shella's sacrifice. Frustrated, Daria wishes to get serious weapons, so they head to the temple using the map that Tisa successfully retrieved. Later on, they reach the temple but struggle to open the door. Luckily, Daria decodes the hieroglyphics on the walls, and they're able to enter. As they enter the temple, Daria remembers Zed's warning about the Phantom Zone. She senses that the laws of time and space might not apply there. Suddenly, she loses sight of Tisa. As she walks in the mist, an alien appears behind her, and she immediately slits its throat. Elsewhere, an alien tries to abduct Tisa, but she manages to kill it. Later on, she finds an immobile alien with a laser weapon as an arm. Tisa tries to take the weapon, but it suddenly growls and chokes her. Meanwhile, Daria finds a huge gun, but as she turns back, she finds an alien carrying Tisa's unconscious body. Daria immediately shoots it dead, and when Tisa awakens, she shows her the other weapons. Unable to see the exit through the fog, Daria figures that using the gun's supersonic shock waves, the direction that doesn't echo the waves back will be the exit. With this, they fire the guns in circles. Later on, they leave the temple, unaware that the alien is still alive. Elsewhere, Zed is waiting by the chasm to ambush Daria and Tisa. At the same time, the alien also sets out to pursue them. They walk over the chasm, but Zed shoots them, and an intense gunfight ensues. Unfortunately, Daria loses her balance and falls. Zed takes Tisa back to the castle, and he relentlessly forces himself on her. Fortunately, Daria arrives, alive and clad in gold armor and a shield. She immediately attacks Zed, and they get into an intense duel. At the same time, the androids appear, but Tisa destroys one of them by reflecting its laser beam back. Just then, the alien from the temple enters the castle and shoots the remaining android. It attacks Zed then heads over to Tisa. However, Daria knocks it dead with a mace, and it dissolves. Right away, the women head to the trophy room to steal Zed's spaceship. Not long after, the engine starts, and Daria and Tisa are finally free to explore the universe. However, Zed is still alive, but barely. As Daria and Tisa fly out of the planet, Zed initiates a self-destruct on his fortress and kills himself. The end. Subscribe for more videos like this. Bye.